Hey guys, welcome to the Sim Racing Paddock. I'm William Marsh, and one of the coolest things about being a sim racing YouTuber is you get the opportunity to try out some incredible equipment. So I've tested out direct drive wheels, I've tested out sim racing cockpits, high-end pedals, also motion. But one of the interesting things about motion is I've always had to travel to a location to test it out. I've had to travel to Southern California to go visit CXC to test out their Motion Pro 2. I ended up going to Laguna Seca to test out a couple of cockpits that had multiple degrees of freedom from SimCraft. But this is the first time I have had a full-fledged, turnkey, do-it-yourself motion setup in my own studio. So the cost of this, though, is actually surprisingly reasonable compared to other cockpits that I've tested out in the past, with this tipping the scales at just about $15,000. Now the thing is, $15,000 is a decent chunk of change. That is just about worth more than both of my cars combined. That's crazy to think about. So how does a $15,000 motion platform perform? Let's take a look. So to start off, let's get the motion out of the way. So I was sent a first generation 4-actuator D-Box motion setup from Kenneth Knapp from the Sim Racers Facebook group. So again, I do want to thank Ken for loaning me this setup so I could test it out. And that retails for approximately $4,500. So for that price, you're getting a lot of motion. But that $15,000 figure I'm talking about is turnkey, monitor, computer, wheel, pedals, everything. So that is my personal configuration. But if you just wanted this sort of motion, then you can actually get it for under $5,000 and add it on to what you have currently. So I do want to give a rundown on what I am running on this right now. So first off, I'm going to go about the cockpit, and then I'm going to go with the computer and my specs. So the cockpit I have this mounted to is the Heusinveld Sim Rig GT. I originally reviewed this, I believe, back in 2018, back when I finally had the equipment to actually be able to use the cockpit. So with that being said, this is not personally a cockpit I would recommend for the masses, because it is one of the more expensive aluminum extrusion-based cockpits, and it is also incredibly specialized. You can likely have a list of the types of wheels that are compatible with this wheel, and you would still have fingers left over on your hands. So with that, you have this front mount tray. And the front mount allows for midge-based open sim wheels or the SimiCube 2, the Cole Morgan motor that is used in a sim steering. It also has support for Fanatic Club Sport wheels and the Sim Experience AccuForce, but that's still a very, very svelte list. You don't have really any support for any other belt-driven wheels. You don't have support for, say, the Simagic M10, which is a newer direct drive wheel. So for that, I've been running my SimiCube 2 Pro. And now this is still my favorite performing direct drive wheel at the time of this filming. And I've tested out over a half dozen direct drive wheels. So with that being said, this is easily the best performing, and it is something where I do enjoy it. It has the SimiCube wireless wheel protocol, so you can actually remove your steering wheel using their quick release or any other quick release, and you get the wireless wheel protocol. You flip the switch, it's already on, and you would get the paddle shifters and all the buttons working. And this is the Asher B16L SimiCube wireless button box that is mated to a Fanatic Forza Motorsport 320mm D-shaped wheel. So that is what I've been using as my primary go-to wheel. My secondary wheel I've been using on this setup is the Cube Controls Formula Classic, which I am in the process of reviewing. On the side of pedals, I am utilizing the Heusinveld Sim Pedal Sprint. That is another new addition to this daily driver cockpit, and I am still working on fine-tuning the pedals to really suit my driving style, But so far, I'm pretty darn impressed. It does have a bit of a different feel than my previous Sim Pedals Pro. The brake pedal is far more stiff than the pedals on the Pro. The clutch actually has a better feel in my opinion. I'm still fine-tuning the throttle, but it has a very progressive feel that is actually pretty pleasant. The pedal on my Pro feels a little like sort of grainy, but that could be due to dirt over years of use, so it might need just some fine-tuning. So, on the shifter and handbrake side, both of them are the Heusinveld Engineering shifter and handbrake. The main reason I'm using them is they're the ones that fit best on the cockpit. This doesn't have a conventional aluminum extrusion-based side shifter mount, so you utilize what is actually on the Heusinveld rig. So, that is basically the gist of everything that is on my cockpit as of right now. And now let's talk about my monitor and my computer. So to start off with the monitor, I was really torn because I was wanting to use triple screens on this. But with the Heusinveld Sim Rig GT, it has the integrated monitor stand. So that means that if you have the cockpit moving, the monitor's moving as well. And with 3 monitors moving, it really throws the weight around and it messes, in my opinion, with the equilibrium. And also, I was noticing that it was starting to actually damage my side monitors. So you need to be cautious with how you're mounting it. Sometimes a better triple screen mounting solution works. The mounting solution on the Heusinveld Sim Rig GT is one of the few flaws I have with this cockpit. So I'm okay running a single ultra wide on this setup. And that is going to be the Alienware AW3418DW, I believe. So that is the 34-inch ultra-wide IPS monitor that I've been enjoying lately. And then I have that paired to my secondary computer. Right now, this is running the AMD Ryzen 9 3900X processor mated to an NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti. That is pretty darn beefy. It should be able to handle next to anything I throw at it, even at 3440 by 1440. But I might need to turn down a few settings to get that full buttery 120 frames per second. So this is a very, very solid sim racing turnkey ideal setup in my opinion. So the only thing I'd say that you could really change to make it better is maybe go with a 49-inch ultra wide or with a triple screen setup with a beefier cockpit monitor mount. And the thing is that realistically, this is what I would almost say is the end game for sim racing. This is the kind of thing that you get almost the best of the best. In my opinion, a D-Box motion setup as it is properly configured beats out the $55,000 CXC Motion Pro 2. It beats out the SimCraft cockpits that are double the price at $30,000. So this kind of turnkey setup at $15,000, it's pretty astounding what you get performance-wise. But also on the flip side, I'm just about done with my testing of this motion setup. I'm about to send it back to Ken, so he's going to send this motion setup out to a client in Australia. And the more I think about it, the more I think, you know, I'm actually not going to miss the motion that much. I'm not going to miss this sort of motion like shaking me around because, like it or not, sim racing is never going to be real life. There are always going to be these elements that you have to sort of compensate for. So motion compensates for the lack of the seat of the pants experience. And the problem with that is when you are driving a car, you have lateral forces. You have lateral forces being applied to you as you corner, which is more pushing you side to side. My biggest complaint with any motion setup is it has to exaggerate that motion. It actually has to throw your body weight around in a sense to sort of compensate for that side to side feeling or even front to back. And unfortunately, that is still something that I don't believe we'll ever get to like a true one-to-one compensation. And granted, while motion is a heck of a lot of fun, it still comes off as a gimmick. It still is something where ultimately driving with a D-Box motion setup, which in my opinion is one of the best motion setups you can buy, it still feels like you drive a car with a lot of body roll. And when you're driving in an oval environment, like in NASCAR, when you are driving on a banked turn in an oval, it just kind of feels wrong. It feels disorienting almost. If you're driving rally, then the forces just get so harsh, so intense, it messes with your vision. And granted, that is semi-realistic, but at the same time, it's not as realistic as actually driving in a car. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, this motion setup, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to test it out. And maybe someday when my channel grows further, I'll buy one for myself. But ultimately, it's not like I'm going to be crying myself to sleep as I'm missing this. Because the thing is, everything else allows me to get immersed. And the motion, in my honest opinion, it feels like it kind of pulls away. Because when you're driving with a steering wheel, you're getting very, very close. Granted, force feedback is also an intermediary force that's compensating, but at the same time, it's easier to trick my brain into making that work and learn that system. For pedals, yeah, I'm missing some of the stuff like the chattering of an ABS system, but ultimately it is something where I'm able to make that work well enough to trick my brain. Motion, you're able to do that, but it adds more variables that I feel end up sort of detracting from the experience. So again, sometimes I've talked about the feeling of being competitive versus being immersed. So motion is definitely an investment for a sim racer looking for an immersive experience. It might not be best for someone looking for competitive experiences because the thing is, you can overdrive yourself in a motion setup. You can push so hard that if you have your motion setup set up in a strong manner, then you are going to overdrive yourself and become disoriented. That is something that a driver in a static cockpit is not going to have. So it's something to think about. It's something to think. Are you looking for the most competitive lap times? Then motion might not be the right fit for you. Maybe a seatbelt tensioner, maybe just a seat mover, but not really a full-fledged motion setup in my opinion. But also, again, this is just my opinion. I have friends who swear by their motion platforms. I have friends who swear by this exact D-Box setup. But the thing is, personally, I'm kind of ready to be done with motion for the time being. I'm ready to just go back to my static rig and just have fun with that. But for someone looking for a good motion setup, I'd say D-Box is pretty freaking awesome. So yeah, guys, this is sort of my raw thoughts on what it's like to drive with a sim racing setup that is worth more than my car. That's just so weird to think about. But yeah, it's a trip. It's been a blast to use this, but I'm ready to send it back. So yeah, guys, I'd love your opinion on motion in sim racing. Do you think that it really is that immersive experience that is a must drive? Or do you think it's a little gimmicky? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. Helps keep us on track. For Sim Racing Paddock, I'm William Marsh, and thanks for watching.